Hello, we gather again. New triad, though. We are moving into the head triad, which is dominated by thinking. So this encompasses numbers, or types 4, or no,
Five.
not types 4, types 5, 6, and 7. And so we begin today with type 5, which is the investigator. One of the things right off the bat that I found really funny about the number 5 is they don't like meetings. So if you work with a 5, like full disclosure up front, don't expect them to sit in a lot of meetings and be joyful about it, which that's probably my favorite thing about the 5 so far, because it's honest. I think there's a lot of truth to that. A healthy 5 exhibits balance between participation and observation. And they can do so because they have such a depth in so many knowledge areas that they know when they can offer something that will contribute to the conversation in a meaningful way, but they can also sit back and see what others are contributing as well. And a different way of looking at that is they see themselves as part of the entire environment. Not strictly just one piece, but they can see themselves kind of from like the 30,000-foot view. An average 5 holds to this idea of a scarcity mindset. And their place of comfort is in observing what is going around them. They're not necessarily sure they have enough energy to deal with this particular thing or enough knowledge to deal with that particular thing. So it's not so much like scarcity of resources as it is scarcity of engaging in whatever might be taking place, whether it be of time, knowledge, or something else. Also, they rely on themselves instead of faith. Like, these are the people who they don't rely on anyone else to do anything for them. They're going to make sure that they are as prepared as they can possibly be in whatever situation they're going into with the knowledge that they might need. They don't want to feel incompetent, and so it makes sense. If you have all this knowledge, then you're not going to be seen as incompetent. You're going to be seen as this bearer of a wealth of information. And average 5s will measure their time with others, and so we'll talk a little bit more about what that might look like. But they're very conscious of how much energy they're expending and how much time they're spending in particular situations. Unhealthy 5s will never depend on other people. It is very much an all-me mindset. They have a very defensive personality, and they feel like there's never enough. And so it leads to an increase in cynicism and judgment when they're interacting with other people if they're in an unhealthy place. This deadly sin is an interesting one. It's not a common one we would hear about. It's avarice. And so they need to protect or retain what they have. So they hoard these resources, but mainly they're hoarding their time, their energy, their physical space, their personal info, solitude, right, and privacy. So silence and time away is so important for 5s. And they also love to gather, again, ideas and information. And it's not always about one particular topic. It is about a whole wealth.
So you could ask a 5 about probably any topic under the sun, and they would have at least one thing to say about it.
Probably. Whether it's animal science or theology,
Yeah.
they probably have something to contribute to that conversation, for sure. But it's interesting because as much as 5s hoard certain things, they are minimalists when it comes to possessions. They don't want everything to be around them because that's just taking more energy to focus on what to do with them or how to navigate or how to make sure things are clean. And so they tend to live a pretty minimalist lifestyle when it comes to actual items.
So the hoarding is up here.
Mm-hmm. It's
It's not out here.
Yeah, it's of those things that we give that drain us, but it's not those physical possessions. So it might be in our head, I mean, right? Like it could be our energy. Yeah. They also prefer to observe. Like, and I think that's right? I mean, we know that that's an important piece. These are the people who are looking at things from every perspective. 5s are who we want in our corner when we're trying to decide what we need to get. because they're going to look at it from every angle and they're going to remain neutral about it, and they're going to be able to tell you the pros and cons of each thing so that you have the knowledge needed to make the decision. But they won't want to make the decision for you. That's on you.
So when I was a waiter, we would have secret shoppers come in, and you know, they would rank you and give it back to your manager. But I imagine, you know, I've heard of this in churches too, where you've got that secret shopper who comes and worships and experiences your building and your hospitality, and so a 5 would be great.
Perfect. Yeah.
At that.
And would be able to give like a very comprehensive overview without telling you what you need to do.
I feel like a 5 would be great on a church council.
I agree.
A good perspective, a wide perspective, lots of ideas and knowledge. Okay.
Yeah. So 5s, even though they tend to like that privacy, right? They need and they enjoy relationship and community. We've talked about this, like we are communal beings, but they will never be the one to initiate a hangout. So they might be receptive to hanging out with you, but they're not going to be the ones to invite you to do something.
Because they're perfectly content to be
Being
alone.
alone. Exactly. Yeah. And so as children, right, I think that's a good lead into kind of as children, how did 5s respond? 5s often felt that in their childhood that a parent or a loved one was too intrusive. They were always in their business, and so they did their best to withdraw, which meant that throughout their childhood, these were often the kids who had no problem sitting and playing by themselves while everyone else was playing together. These people are curious, they're imaginative, and so I think they share some of that with the 4 that we talked about, in that, you know, they have a lot of opportunity to blossom and to really reflect on some really meaningful pieces that come from that time of being alone. 5s like to feel in control, though. And the way they do that isn't necessarily through controlling others, but through the wealth of knowledge that they hold.
Accumulation of knowledge and then retreating into your mind to get to experience it.
Mm-hmm. So they always have that knowledge that if placed in a position that might make them seem like they're out of control, they have something that can help show that they hold the knowledge, that they're not incompetent. They're just maybe not as vocal about something. Also true about 5s, though, is they can be easily overwhelmed. And so to combat this, they compartmentalize. So family has a compartment. Work has a compartment. If they're, in a specific hobby, it has its compartment. If they're in multiple hobbies, each hobby has a compartment. And so they are willing to allocate this much time and this much energy to each of these things and not an ounce more. And also, because of how they compartmentalize their time, similar to a 3, they don't often let other people know what is happening in other compartments of their life. So it's not so much that they don't let people come together because they don't want others to see like who they might be in that circumstance. It's they don't let people come together because I only have this much energy for these people in this time, and that can't interact with this time. And so that part I thought was really fascinating. In a time of work, 5s are ones who need time. So don't schedule meetings. Don't schedule meetings and expect them to give you an answer right away either. If you want an answer from a 5, it's something that they need to be able to dwell on, and to dwell on in private, not in the midst of others. So the big message I took away was, if we have 5s on our team, not to rush them in decisions, and to give ample time as they're maybe processing through something.
Yeah, they got to go through the Rolodex
Yeah.
of all the what ifs.
They got to zoom out to
Yeah.
30,000 feet and look at every pro and con for each angle. When 5s are in a period of stress, they tend to hoard more of those internal resources that we were talking about. And they will actually cling and move tightly to other physical things as well. When they're feeling secure, they move to an 8, where they become more spontaneous and outspoken. So you kind of get to see them come out of their shell.
And I would imagine, so thinking about the 8s, that 5s are then able to use their knowledge to stand up for the underdog or for people who need support,
I'm sure.
which would be very cool to witness.
Wings.
Wings. So 5s are wedged between the passionate and intense 4s, who are the romantics on one side, and the loyal but anxious 6s on the other. Either or both the qualities of those types can be available to a 5. So these 5s are more creative, the ones with the 4 wings, more creative, sensitive, empathetic, and self-absorbed. The 5s with the 6 wing, fear plays a more prominent role in the life of a 5 with a 6 than it does in the life of a 5 with a 4. Now, I don't remember. So this is they're called the thinkers,
Yeah.
but did we just move into
A new triad.
a new triad, and that's
Yep.
fear? Is that right?
Yeah.
I believe it's fear.
Yeah. So it's head and thinking, and then fear would be.
Yeah.
So the way in which these are all going to exhibit fear now, moving forward, is going to be an important part of the focus, just like feelings really were with 2, 3, and 4, and anger with 8, 9, and 1.
Sure.
Anything else on 5s?
Kind of the spiritual, kind of the transformational piece. Allow your feelings to arise naturally and experience them in the present moment, and then you can let them go. Because if you're an analyzer, you probably don't let them go. You dwell a little bit.
Yeah. And there wasn't like a clear healing message in this one, but I think, as I read through it, the parts that stand out is there is enough, and there are people who are willing to be in your court if you let them in. It doesn't have to always be by yourself.
And another one of those kind of, here's some good medicine for you. Try to remember that you don't have to have all the answers to everything. You won't look foolish. You'll just look human.